Hello, Wendi Jensen here, your second life midwife, here to help you rebirth the new you that's starting to emerge. And my topic for this video is how to cope with shunning. We experience a couple different shunnings as we're leaving a high demand religion. And I want to talk about covert shunning and overt shunning. So if you're a Jehovah's Witness and you're leaving your religion, you're going to experience overt shunning, which means it's obvious, it's woven into the doctrine, that shunning is what we should do and what Jehovah wants us to do in order to prove our dedication and loyalty to Jehovah. And it has in there such great penalties if you're disassociated. If you're disassociated, then it's actually even the members of the church, it's their responsibility to shun you as well. And if they don't, their penalties are that they could get disfellowshipped as well. So you go into this leaving your organization knowing that the shunning is something that goes on. You're very familiar with it, and you know it's going to be happening to you as part of your disassociation, or I shouldn't use that word. I meant your differentiation out of that religion. And so you know it's coming, and it doesn't make it any better, but you know that that is going to be how your friends and your family members are going to treat you. And it's scary. In the Mormon church, it's a little bit different in that in their theology, we're not supposed to shun. We don't believe in shunning. We believe in loving everybody and being Christ-like citizens of the world, and to especially love those who are struggling. But that is not what happens. And they'll give you scriptures and quotes of the prophets to let you know that that's not what we believe, but it is what they practice. And so it's very dismissive, and it's almost like gaslighting, where we're not shunning you. That's all in your mind, or it's not that bad. And what did you expect? You're the one that left. There's all kinds of really insensitive comments that are made by members who are still believing, who they don't realize how rude and obnoxious their words are to those who are leaving. And they'll quote things on Facebook, other social media platforms, where they're expressing, how faithless those people who leave are, and how much it causes their family to struggle, as if it was the person who's leaving, it's their fault and not the doctrine's fault. And once you leave, you understand that it's a toxic doctrine. And those are the dynamics of high control groups that have a little bit of I hate to say the word, but it's their cultish programming and technology woven into the doctrine that makes you afraid to leave. And so I wanted to talk about those two. I don't know which one is worse, which one is better. I think they're both terrible, and they can affect our psyche, especially at a very vulnerable time when we're trying to discover who we are, and we need as much support as we can. But what it causes us to do is to go inward and to start building that confidence within ourselves, knowing that we would rather know ourselves and start building who we are as and developing our autonomy away from the religion and away from the indoctrination. That's even more important to us than being accepted by our tribe and being accepted by the church. So it's a big time for us, and it takes a lot of courage, and we're really vulnerable. And when we hear the attacks and we feel the shunning at that vulnerable time, it just adds on to the trauma. So another thing I wanted to talk about is reverse shunning. And that is when you start shunning the people in your life who are still believers. And you may be unconscious of this behavior too, not realizing that the things that you say are insensitive and are very cause division. And our goal, my goal as a coach, is to help you wake up and clean up and show up in your life. And many times we think it's just enough to wake up. We don't know that there's more development needs to happen. And waking up is not enough. We have to grow up and clean up in order to show up in our life and to create a new life, the life that feels authentic for us and the one that we're meant to live. So here are 7 tips to help you cope with the shunning that you're experiencing. And tip number 1 is to know who you are and to know where you're going. When you know who you are and you know where you're going, what other people say about you doesn't matter as much. It feels like water brushing off the back of a duck. It just doesn't penetrate deep into you and cause you to have all this emotional crisis going on. Now, when you're leaving church and you're just new in you're the infant stages of your transition, you don't know who you are. You're not quite sure who you are. That's the journey you're on, is discovering who you are. So again, you're in this vulnerable state. And once you're aware that you're in that vulnerable state, and once you're aware that the shunning is going to happen and how it might affect you, and once you're aware that knowing who you are is really going to be the shield of protection for you to be able to withstand the shunning. A couple years from now, that shunning's not, you're not even going to feel it. It's going to feel silly because you understand where they're coming from. You've been there before. And it's not going to affect you because you feel secure in who you are and where you're going. So that is number 1, is set that goal. I'm going to find out who I am, and I'm going to make a plan for where I'm going, so that when someone attacks me and says I'm a non-believer, that I've been deceived by Satan, and that I'm sitting at the table of demons, or whatever things that they use to dismiss the fact that you're transitioning out of a traditional paradigm that's not working for you anymore. It was not going to affect you. And it won't be so detrimental to your psyche and to your growth and development. So you can start shifting out and growing and moving beyond and empowering yourself. Number 2, look for those who accept you for who you are. Here's something to remember. You don't belong in places where you have to try and fit in. I'm going to repeat that. You don't belong places where you have to try and fit in. If you are compromising who you are, and this is what we're learning at this stage of growth and development, if I have to compromise who I am, I don't belong there. When I'm saying about who you are, I mean, if you're having to compromise your values and compromise pieces and parts of your personality that feel intrinsic to you, I'm not talking about you're gonna have to change your behavior if you're a jerk. I'm not talking about places where you feel like an outsider, places where you have to adjust and compromise yourself in order to fit in. That's not where you belong. And that's part of learning to know yourself. And so surround yourself with people who accept you for who you are. I'm going to give you a hint about some of the people that might be, and those are people who are going through the same transition as you, or they have gone through it at some point in their life. They're going to totally get you, and you don't have to prove anything to them. They understand what's happening. And the thing is you probably aren't aware of how many people there are out there, because you're coming out of kind of a cultural bubble, and you don't realize that most of the world kind of gets it, and they're happy for you to come out of that small-minded paradigm. And so that means you're going to have to start extending yourself and talking to others and sharing your story and letting people know what's going on with you. People learn to find people that you trust and accept you for who you are. In the religion, we were accepted for what we believed. Now we're looking to find the people who just accept us for who we are, and not what we can do for them, and not for what our beliefs are, because our beliefs are similar. The third one is not just learning to accept yourself, but yearning to accept yourself. At this stage in your life is requesting, it's calling for you, it's almost demanding that you turn inward for self-validation, for self-acceptance, that you become the sustaining life force energy in your life, so that you aren't dependent on those external sources for validation, that you're okay with who you are from within, and you're learning to accept yourself and love yourself and have that sense of self-belonging and self-permission and validation. You're empowering yourself by pulling all those energetic tentacles away from the backdrop of the church, the backdrop of your tribe, the backdrop of your culture, and being able to turn it inward, so that validation comes from within. We all seek validation. We all seek acceptance. But when we can receive that acceptance and validation from within, whatever we get out there, whatever other people give us, is like a cherry on top of the cake. It's not something that we thrive on. It's not something we try to get. It's not something we'll compromise ourselves in order to receive it. We're actually learning to provide ourselves that self-affirmation. Number 4, remember and try to understand that they don't understand you. They don't understand what you're going through, and they can't relate to you anymore. There's very similar things that they know about you now, and they're kind of afraid to know. And when you no longer agree with their strongest convictions, there's a lot that your commonalities have just collapsed. So for example, you know someone of your religion really quickly, and this is an analogy that I learned from Rodney Allgood. You know somebody of your religious affiliation quickly. We can recognize each other. For Mormons, we're wearing garments or we say things a certain way, so we have a vernacular that we learned in church. For Jehovah's Witness, you can just sense, you know who your people are, and you know when you're around them. You know if somebody says, I'm LDS, you know at that moment, you know about 85% of who they are. You know what their beliefs are, you know what they think about sex, you know what they think about cussing, you know what they think about alcohol, you know what they think about modesty, you know what the curriculum is for an LDS person, and so you know what the commonalities are instantly. And what happens is it kind of leaves us underdeveloped, if you will, because the rest of the world that don't belong to such heavy indoctrinated religions, they don't really, they have to learn how to get along with people for some other reason than their religion, that we have the same religion. They have to look for other commonalities and ask the person questions and become very interested in them. We didn't ever have to be so curious about people before because we had already made friends and already made groups, and we had instant word families and instant church congregations provided for us. So it really left us at a disadvantage in our ability to make friends and connect with people for some other reason than their religion. So that is the next one, is to understand that they don't know who you are anymore, and they can't relate. And so it's time for you to go find people who can relate to you and to discover your friends and to start being inquisitive to people and start collecting friends from different walks of life. That's the exciting part about transition, is you don't have all those barriers that you had up between us and them. Now those barriers are taken down, and now we can make friends with anybody that we want to, and we can learn all about them, and then we can decide if our values are similar, not our religion, our values and our principles. The next one, number 5, is to consider that your family members that are still in, that they're afraid of you. They are afraid for you. They've been taught that you've been deceived, that you've been lied to, that that they don't want to make an effort to understand you because they might learn something that would cause their testimony to be diminished. So that means it becomes our responsibility to let them know that you're still safe to be with them. You still love them. You accept them for who they are, even though you don't accept what they believe. And this might be new for a lot of people. And you know what? It might work for that person and it might not. It just depends on where they are. Remember, this is about your development. And it's about you learning new skills, and about you awakening and growing and cleaning up and showing up in a new way. And so whether or not this effort to let the person know that you love them no matter what is going to work or not, it's totally up to them. But your effort is going to grow you. So what I've heard Rodney say, and he's the one that he helps people who are transitioning out of Jehovah's Witness to be empowered. And I like what he says. about offering, cards, sending gifts to your family members who are not able to associate with you, and there's a distance, and just keep love bombing them and just letting them know you're still there, that you love them and that you care about them. And you might not be able to talk to them and you might not be able to see them, but just let them know that you're aware and that you still love them. And continue to just send them cards and gifts and attention and try to be involved in their life and let them know that you're safe to be around and that your love for them hasn't changed. Number 6, the church doctrines teach us to be afraid to leave. And that is part of the matrix of a control group or a mind control and the dynamics, cult dynamics. And so the church doctrines teach us to be afraid to leave. Many people in the church would argue, no, we don't teach you to be afraid to leave, but they absolutely do. See, we were taught that if we leave, it's because we were led astray. If we leave, anything that causes us to leave is because we're being deceived by the adversary who wants to destroy and annihilate us. We're taught that if we leave, we will no longer have the Holy Spirit to be with us and to guide us and to inspire us and to comfort us. That's a scary thing all in and of itself. We are taught that if we leave, that we'll be denying ourselves and our family blessings in the next life, the blessings of the priesthood and all of the things that our ancestors have sacrificed so long for. So there absolutely is a terror barrier placed around the belief system of the religion that causes you not to leave. And so that's something to consider, that the truth is the church and the people in the church are afraid of us. They're afraid of the apostates. That's why they want to distance themselves from us. And so, yes, the church doctrines teach us to be afraid to leave. The truth is they're afraid of us and what we know now, and of us bringing back information to let them know that, hey, it's not that bad out here. In fact, it's wonderful. The world is great, and I'm happier than I've ever been. So if you can remember those doctrines and realize that you now have technicolor vision, you can see both worlds. You can see a portion of the world that you're creating, but you can see all of the world that you're coming from. And they can only see that one world. They haven't woke up yet. And so to expect them to be able to behave in a way that's synonymous with someone who's awoke, it just creates a lot of friction in relationships. And so that burden comes on our shoulders, and it becomes our responsibility. I love the definition of responsibility. It's an increased ability to respond, an increased ability to respond to life. And so if we take that responsibility onto us and and not judge them so harshly and be so critical about the world that they're in, even though it looks so obvious to us, and we can hear the arrogance and we can hear the condemnation and the contempt against those who leave. They can't hear it. They don't know what they're saying, and they're coming from a place that they just can't see it like you can. And so allow yourself to be the one that will take on that respond ability. And the 7th one, shunning teaches us resilience. Shunning teaches us compassion. Until we are shunned and we're not accepted and we're not included and we're cut off and we're kicked out, we can't learn this resilience and this compassion. There's ways that we can learn it somewhat, but until you become the minority instead of the majority, you don't know what it feels like to be on the outside looking in. And this might be a whole new thing for you. It certainly was for me. You see, I was like the perfect Mormon mom, the perfect ideal. I'm white, for one thing. I was married in the temple to a priesthood holder. I have 5 children, so I was dedicated to multiplying and replenishing the earth. I had a temple recommend, and I was going frequently. I have my food supply. I was teaching gospel doctrine in the church and holding callings, and I was the perfect Mormon mom. And so I was always very much a part of the Mormon culture. It wasn't until I left that I recognize the disparity even among those in my own culture that didn't fit the ideal family paradigm. And so, you know, I would see the plight of single moms and what it feels like to be divorced and how they were treated. And I saw people who were of the LGBTQ community and how they were being treated and what it must felt like to be in that religion being them. And I saw people who just didn't fit like I fit, like a puzzle, like it was my puzzle. I didn't see the pain that they were going through. It's almost invisible to me. And now it just caused me for my heart to break wide open for them and to be very sensitive and aware and compassionate towards them that I never had before. And so it was that shunning, me being shunned from my religion and being willing and courageous enough to experience that persecution, I guess. I don't want to use that word, but just disappointing other people and not oppressing them anymore, and they're not going to think fondly anymore. I was willing to take that risk in order to find myself. And at that point, I started to understand what it feels like to be an outsider looking in. And so that, again, brings you resilience. It is the thing that causes you to start accepting yourself from within. And it makes you just a stronger person that you wouldn't be otherwise had you not experienced the shunning. So we tend to experience shunning unconsciously. We're aware of how others shun us, but we're not aware of how we shun other people. And shunning, the word shunning means a pushing away, a dividing and separating yourself from others. And granted, it's a good thing for us to separate ourselves so we can start healing and doing the necessary healing we need to do and start breathing our own air and not the air that's been infused into us, and to really understand who we are. But ultimately, we want to be the kind of people that is more unified, that lives more harmonically in the world. And we can't do this when we have animosity and resentment towards the house in which we've been wounded. So that's the part of us forgiving. That's a whole nother video. But just know that the shunning is building resilience in you. It's making you a stronger person, and it's upgrading your skills in the world. If you are looking for coaching in this tumultuous time where you need help navigating through a lot of these skills, and you realize that you're a little underdeveloped when you leave the religion, and you want to give yourself the greatest head start to help you harness all the wisdom that happens through the crisis, and to be able to turn it around and use it to become a powerful being in the world for good, then I would love to consider coaching with me. I have something for everyone. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel right here on YouTube, or you can go to Kindle and look at my book, A Peculiar Transition, Healing the Trauma of Mormon Faith Crisis. You can also consider joining my Rebirthing School. If registration is open, there might be an opening for you, and I would love to have you join me. Regardless, I would love to hear from you. So private message me or message me in the comments below on YouTube, and let me be a resource to help you through this time in any way that feels appropriate for you. I hope this was helpful. Take care.